depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today, I'm going to be showing you a rather weird new item card that I wasn't expecting, and I'm willing to believe that most of you weren't expecting, but could be kind of fun if it is a little bit weird. It is Drone Rotom, and stop me if you've heard this one before, but our translation here comes from the lovely Antoine Boulet, and it is an item card that reads, look at your opponent's hand, then look at the top card of your opponent's deck, and put it back on top of their deck. I mean, if we're looking thematically here, it is a Drone Rotom that lets you gather a bunch of information about your opponent's hand and the top of their deck. In terms of, hang on a second, that makes sense in the context of the card, this is actually really cool. Is it a good card? Well, what really weirds me out a little bit here is that it's actually kind of an amalgamation of other cards that we've seen. Now, the whole look at your hand thing is like the stadium card Lavender Town, that is it's obviously a two-sided stadium, as these things tend to be, and Lavender Town lets you, once during your turn, look at your opponent's hand. Although it must obviously be borne in mind that then once during their turn, your opponent can look at your hand. But it does basically let you sneak a peek at your opponent's hand. And as for looking at the top card of your opponent's deck, we've got a Lantern that does that. The Lantern that came around in Cosmic Eclipse does have the ability Blinking Lights. As often as you like during your turn, you may look at the top card of your opponent's deck. Now, the reason it's important that it's as often as you like is so you can look at the top card of their deck, and then play a reset stamp, and then look at the top card of their deck, and then play a Marnie, and then look at the top card of their deck, maybe even play another reset stamp if that's what you're into. Essentially, what you're trying to do is make sure that your opponent does not draw the thing they want at the beginning of their next turn. Although having said that, if you do keep refreshing their hand, you'll need to use Lavender Town again, and Lavender Town is limited to once during your turn. Well, the good thing about Drone Rotom is this will do both of them in one go. And make no mistake about it, this is awesome. The issue I have is anybody actually going to find the room in their deck for this card? And are they going to draw it at the right time? Because the thing is, let's say it's turn one of the game, and you draw one of these, or it's your first turn, but you're going second, and you've got a Professor's Research in hand. You're going to discard your hand and draw 6 cards because you need to set up. Now, don't get me wrong, looking at the top card of your opponent's deck, looking at your opponent's hand, it still gives you more information. It still leaves you in a better position than you would have been in otherwise. But make no mistake about it, it is far from perfect, shall we say. It is one of those things where, I can see what they're going to do next turn, but it's not actually going to change my game plan. But there are so many times that this absolutely is. So let's say, for argument's sake, you're playing a Frostmoth deck. And what you really want here is to not bench a second Snom. And there are 2 reasons for this. You've got a Quick Ball in your hand. Reason number 1, you do not want to play that Quick Ball to get a Snom. You want to play that Quick Ball to get, an Inteleon V. But you know how important getting Frostmoth is. So what you end up doing is going to get that Snom. The other reason is that you don't want to just give up a bench space for Snom. You want one Frostmoth on the bench, you don't want any others. But you are terrified that your opponent is going to be able to play a Boss's Orders and KO that Snom with a Pokemon that really doesn't do very much damage. So what you can essentially do here is look at your opponent's hand. Now, you can do that with Lavender Town, and that'll tell you if your opponent's got a Boss's Orders or not. Here's the thing, they could still top deck one. Now, the chances are very low that they will, but we've all been in that situation. When you can look at their hand and the card they're going to draw at the beginning of their next turn, that basically tells you everything you need to know. Now, maybe they've got an Acrobike, and that Acrobike could get them a Boss's Orders, but you know that going in. You know going in that they've got an Acrobike that could turn into a Boss's Orders, and that makes a big difference. Maybe they've got something like, I would say Judge Whistle, but Judge Whistle rotated out a little. No, it didn't. No, it didn't. We're in that weird format where Judge has rotated out, but Judge Whistle hasn't rotated out. So now, in the standard format, Judge Whistle is literally just draw a card. I love little weird things like this. So again, that would give your opponent a chance to draw it, but you've still got that information. And that is what Drone Rotom does. It's not going to do anything, but it is going to give you that information. So let's say, for argument's sake, you play a Pokegear, and your choices are you can grab a Boss's Orders, or you can grab something like a Marnie. A lot of the time, what you're essentially doing is trying to play the odds. Boss's Orders is awesome to take out your opponent's only Jirachi, because that's the only way they're going to be searching and drawing cards and all next turn. But if they've got another one they can just bench, it's not as good. Whereas Marnie is really nice in terms of being able to refresh your opponent's hand, give them a potentially bad hand, but gee whiz, it sure would be nice to know exactly what you're getting rid of with Marnie. Well, here we go. This will do it. But it's still an awkward to search out item card. And it's still going to be awkward to try and find it at the right time. I mean, clearly, if you just want to sneak a peek at your opponent's hand, and sorry, Gumshoe's GX rotated a little while ago now, but that did have an ability that would allow you to do it, always thought that would see more play than it did. But you can use Lavender Town, but here's the problem. If you're using a fire deck, you don't want to use Lavender Town. You want Giant Half to get your fire energy out the deck. If you're playing a fighting deck, you want Martial Arts Dojo to do a little bit of extra damage, etc. A lot of decks, I think, would like to have the effect of Lavender Town, but cannot justify playing it over another supporter they would rather play instead. Honestly, a lot of people want to play Chaotic Swell, and a lot of the reason for this is that it hurts your opponent. Your opponent's once per game Thunder Mountain, okay, that's rotated, but no wonder Labyrinth hasn't. That increases the cost of all non-fairy Pokemon's attacks by 1 colorless energy. Your opponent can only put one of them in your deck, so if you whack a Chaos Vortex or Chaotic Swell down, it was translated as Chaos Vortex when we first saw it in Japan, then essentially your opponent has to play their own stadium to wipe the Chaos Vortex, and then next turn play Wondrous Labyrinth, and that's why Chaotic Swell ends up being such a good card. Drone Rotom can do it. Now, in terms of looking at the top card of your opponent's deck, I mean, obviously we got Chip Chip Ice Axe that will just flat out, I mean, not just let you look at the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck, but that will just out and out let you pick the best one, and by best I mean best for you, worst for them, and leave it on top of their deck while shuffling the other 2 in. But again, that's an item card, and it doesn't let you look at their hand, so you don't get the full information. I like Lantern as much as the next person. But the fact of the matter is that Lantern is a stage 1 Pokemon that's going to sit on your bench and probably not end up being much of an attacker, so do you really want to have this sitting on your bench? Arguably not. Although, whether you're using Lantern or whether you're using Rotom Drone, do remember about the IPOM from Cosmic Eclipse. Once during your turn, you may put the top card of your opponent's deck on the bottom of their deck without looking at it. Well, clearly, IPOM is kind of awesome because you can find out what they're doing in terms of what they're going to draw next turn, what is the top card of their deck, and then you can use IPOM to get rid of it, and that is kind of funny. I like that this is a combination of Lavender Town and Lantern. I don't love that it's hard to search out. It's a one-time deal, and you might not have it on the perfect turn. This seems like a great card that everybody, I feel like the entire player base is going to look at this, and maybe not today, but at some point in the future is going to look at that and go, oh, you know what, there's so many matchups where if I could just know what was in their hand and what they were going to top deck, I would have such a better time here. I feel like I could really take advantage of this. And yet, I feel like every single person is then going to turn around and go, oh, you know what? Nah, can't justify it, can't find the room for it. I love it, but I just cannot justify cutting other cards for it. And I just feel like that's essentially where we're going to be going with all of these cards. Or this card every time somebody looks at it. So, Yeah, I'm going to give it 3 Wassies. I really like this card. I love the design of the art, and I love mechanically, I think it's a really interesting card. And I can see there have been so many turns, and I'm sure if you've played Pokemon for a while, you will have had a lot of these turns where you're just going, if I just knew what they had in their hand and what they were going to top deck, I'd know which of these 2 strategies I would go for, but there's no way of knowing. This will let you know if you can find it on the right turn. I feel like I'm just going to play this card in a bunch of decks and be super frustrated when I draw it at the wrong time. Hey ho, I'd like to know what you think. Did I give it 3 Wassies? Yeah, I think I did. But I want to know what you think. So let me know in the comment section, would you? Go nuts! Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassie, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCG Radio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.